everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and I am excited to begin a new colour and chat series, and this time round we are going to be working in this absolutely amazing book called The Ink House by Rory Dobner. First and foremost, I would like to say a massive thank you to Cal Jones, who sent me this book. She has gifted it to me and it's an absolutely gorgeous book, and I'm really excited to get started in it. So Cal, thank you for your thoughtfulness and also your generosity as well, because this is just absolutely wonderful and I love this book. For the uninitiated, The Ink House is a storybook. It basically tells the tale of an artist who leaves this old ramshackle house, and all of these animals basically party in the house while he's away. And the illustrations are just amazing, and I wanted to show you just very quickly the kind of style of this book, because it's quite different to things you would normally see in colouring books. And one of the reasons I love it is, although the pictures are quite detailed, the images and the way it's been set out, it's a very clean and sort of orderly style, and I really like that, because that's kind of the way, like, I don't like a lot of clutter, and don't get me wrong, I love colouring in really busy pages from the likes of Kirby Rosanna's, etc., but there's something so visually appealing about this book to me, and the fact that it's full of animals as well. Obviously this is like, if anybody was going to make a colouring book just for me, it's this. So I'm really excited about this, and I've done a wee bit of research, and I think it's fitting that I stick to a particular medium in this book, and I am going to colour with Inktense pencils only in this book. I may use other things for backgrounds, but the bulk of the images are going to be done in Inktense. So I thought this would be really nice to film for you guys as well, because I haven't used my Inktense pencils for quite a while, and I know it's a medium that can take a little bit of getting used to. So if this can help you along in your journey, maybe you're contemplating buying them, or maybe you have them and you're not terribly comfortable with using them, we're going to help out with that. We're going to go for it. Now, because we're working with Inktense, it's going to be quite quick, and as I say, because we've got some quite clean lines and simple images, although the images are detailed, I've decided to do 2 pages side by side, and I'm just going to flick through, and you can see what I mean about this. The book is so different and it's just lovely. I think it's amazing. Okay, so I have selected, this is the part of the book where they sort of introduce all the animals and what they do, like what their roles are for the party. So we have Geraldine the giraffe, and I think she's absolutely adorable. She's like the hostess for like the high teas and everything. And you can see here she's having a little do at one of her cherries that's on top of her cupcakes. And accompanying her on the opposite page is Herman the hermit crab. He isn't the most important guest, as he has been found guilty of dunking biscuits into other guests' tea. And I love this image because a rich tea biscuit, that is a very British thing. That is a very British thing, because they have a tendency not to disintegrate after 4 seconds. So that's why I've decided on these pages. In my head, in my thinking, and just thinking about the layout of this book and the style of the drawings, I'm not going to put in complicated backgrounds. There are a lot of pages, and even the ones that are black in the background, this is one that I coloured as a test run. I just wanted to see how I would get on with Inktense pencils, and I've got a wee bit of gold in there as well. You can see though that even when there's an image, there is quite a lot of white space, and on the dark pages this is all black, and I want to kind of keep to that aesthetic. So when I'm doing backgrounds, in my head I'm thinking I'll probably do quite plain backgrounds, and I might even use pan pastels for the backgrounds, but I'll take that as it comes and see how I feel a bit nearer the time. To help me along on this little adventure that we're going on, I have 2 things. Obviously I have my pencils, that goes without saying. But the other thing I have is my swatch book, and here I have swatched out all of my Derwent Inktense pencils. So there's 72 in the full set, and I've got them all here. But this is just going to help me along a little bit. It's not a set of pencils I use on a really regular basis, so I'm not as familiar with them as I am with the likes of my Polychromos or my Prismacolors. The one thing that does concern me about using Inktense pencils, as the name suggests, these are ink-based, these are not watercolour pencils. So when it comes to the colour range, you don't have the same colour range that you would have in watercolour pencils, and what we are lacking is pale neutral colours like beiges and creams. So that is the only thing, and I think in that sense what I'll do is I'll probably switch out to another pencil in the Derwent range, because I do have quite a few Derwent pencils, and we should be able to balance it that way. So when I was doing the practice image, I wanted to test how much water the pages would take, and there doesn't seem to be any problem at all. So it means we can get some really, really nice effects in this book, and we can really make a good job of this. So other things I've got here are my Kuretake water brush pens. These are my favourites, and I like them because the water letdown consistency is really good. They are getting a bit worn now. I've had these a long time. I've used these consistently for about 3 years. So I've got a very fine tip one, so that's for us to get into our nooks and crannies, because there's quite a lot of small areas in both of these images. And I also have a larger one, and that's just so that we can cover broad areas quite quickly should we need to. But one of the things with these pencils is you have to work quickly when you activate them with water, because once they're dry they don't shift about the same way as watercolour pencils do, and they're fairly permanent. You can lift them and shift them, but it takes quite a lot of scrubbing, which is obviously going to compromise the integrity of the paper, which is what we don't want, because that's when it starts to pill and bobble, and that's just not going to look good at all. And I would say that's one of the main techniques that is important when working with Inktense pencils. You have to learn to work quickly, so you really kind of need to get a move on and make sure that you're prepared. The other thing I've got here is my little Derwent box sharpener. This is just one that I keep for Derwent pencils, just because why not? So we want to plan out our colours really carefully before we start colouring, and that's going to help when we have to start working quickly. You don't have to be making decisions about your pencil choices off the cuff as you go along, because you're really going to put a stress on yourself that you don't need to. So I am very aware of the exact hue of a rich tea biscuit. And again, just what I was talking about earlier, I might actually struggle to get a colour that suits. So I've got a little tester pad here where we can just work out some colours, and I'm going to start with that rich tea biscuit. So I think I want to start with Sicilian yellow and just see if that's something that will give me a nice pale biscuity colour, because rich tea biscuits are quite pale. So I don't want to be pressing hard, because with these pencils, when you activate them with water, that is what really makes them pop, and the colours are really vibrant. So this is quite yellowy, but if we spread it out, I can get it down to quite a pale colour, and that might be quite a nice base coat for our biscuit colour. So I'm going to go with that and see how we get on. You can get some really nice effects with these, and a lot of it's down to how you actually apply the pencil to the paper in the first instance, and then obviously how you manipulate it with your water brush. So I'm not putting a point on it. I've got a reasonably blunt pencil here, and on the side of the pencil, I'm just going to start to lay down a very, very light covering. Now you can build these up. Once your initial layer is dry, you can go back over it, and that's how you get some really cool effects and some nice deep areas of colour should you desire that. So that is literally just a tickle of colour, but that is all we want for the moment. Now I wouldn't suggest going for a bajillion layers on this paper. I mean, it is good quality paper, but unless paper is specifically designed for water media, you do have to be quite sort of conservative about it. So I'm going to use my big tip brush here, and I'm just making sure the water's flowing. I like to just do that in the back of my hand. That is a habit I picked up from Peter Hewitt. If you're looking for additional tutorials on using Inktense pencil, Peter Hewitt is the absolute master. She is the lady that basically inspired me and taught me to colour when I first started. So check out our channel. I'll leave the link down in the description for you if you haven't watched any of her videos. She's a great teacher. So let's just start here, and we can get some colour going. So you can see that's starting to brighten up already just with the addition of water, and that's one of the things that makes these pencils absolutely lovely. I really enjoy these pencils. I say I don't use them a terrible amount, but when I do use them, I really, really enjoy them because it's fun. So I'm just kind of smoothing that out as much as possible. I don't want it to be super smooth, but we do want reasonably smooth for a base coat. So that is quite yellowy. And obviously we want this to be a bit more of a biscuit colour. So there is a tan colour pencil, but it is quite dark. So I'm thinking we might have to be quite sparing with this. So I've got this part of the, where I was testing this before, is quite dry. And I'm just going to try different pressures over the top of this. to see what it's going to look like layered up. Obviously, the more pencil you put down, the more ink there is to activate with the water. So the more intense the colour is going to be. Okay, so we don't want to be pressing really hard, I don't think. But if I have a sort of medium pressure, which was my middle stroke here, then that's going to give us what we want. So I'm going to set this pencil to the side and we'll wait for that to dry. Now, the wonderful thing about hermit crabs is that there are millions, okay, that's a slight exaggeration. There's hundreds of different species of hermit crabs and they come in a variety of shapes, sizes and colours. So we've got quite a lot of room to play with our friend Herman here, but also hermit crabs, they will go and inhabit an empty mollusk and that's their house, and then they carry it about with them, so they've got their own little mobile homes. So really with this shell we can do whatever we want with it. So we've got a little bit of room for a creative manoeuvre. I do like the more colourful hermit crabs, and obviously for a page like this that's going to look quite nice. And they do come in a lot of shades of sort of orangey, reddy colours, a bit like the colour of a cooked lobster. So that's what I was kind of thinking there. So I think we'll start with an orange shade, and then we can maybe build up to some reds as well and use some sort of more sort of like fun variations. It is quite teeny tiny. There we go. That's about as close as I can get. Hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to start with cadmium orange, which is what I would say is like a true orange. And I've got a nice pointy point here because we're working in pretty tight spaces. And the same thing again, I just want to get this base colour down. So we'll get all his little legs coloured in for him. Oh, Herman. So again, just for this first layer, just a light coat of colour. If we want the orange to be more intense, we can go back in with a heavier hand on a second layer once this layer has dried. But until we decide which parts we're going to make more red, we just want this light layer. If you guys had a penny for every time I said that, you'll be really, really rich by now. Because I say it more or less every video. There's just no need to be heavy-handed. I do think there's something incredibly entertaining about a hermit crab holding a rich tea biscuit. I say it's a very British thing. Oh, this is like proper tiny. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get my water brush in there. I might just have to go with the old pencil. And that's the other thing as well that's really nice about these pencils. They are pencils and you can use them as pencils. And that's got advantages as well. And I did do a bit of that when I was colouring my practice picture. So we're going to go with the skinny brush this time. Again, same thing, just get my water flow going. I'm having to be quite careful here. Because we don't have a wide area to cover though, we don't have to worry too much about working quickly because this is all tiny little segments, so there's lots of really convenient places to stop what you're doing, take a breather. But you can see how much that colour pops when you activate it with water, and that's why these pencils are awesome. They are quite expensive, and granted not everybody can justify spending the kind of money on them, but they do come in smaller sets, and because they can be layered up once they're dry, you can still create a lot of the colours that come in the bigger sets with the smaller sets. You just have to be a little bit up on your colour theory. I think they do a 48 set. I know they do a 24 set because I had a 24 set at one point. And even the 24 set gives you a lot of really good colours to work with. I have had a lot of people talking about this book and saying that they own it and they're too intimidated to colour in it. And for me, this is one of... I understand it because it is such a beautiful book, but it's the images like this, you know, it's very little to actually colour. So, you know, that it actually makes things simpler. Okay, so we'll go back to our rich tea biscuit down here, and if you remember, I set aside my tan pencil. We are going to work on these hatched areas, and I've talked about this quite a lot in grayscale books. If the artist has left you lines, they've left them there for a reason, and it's to help you because they've put those lines in to add dimension or a particular curvature or angle to a drawing. So we need to take that as colourists as a cue and start using them. So very lightly again, I'm just going into these hatched areas here. There's a little bit down here. And up round where Herman has his mucky claws, claws on his biscuit. Let me maybe taking that a bit too far, so I'll have to be careful with that. And in this part where he's taking a chunk out it, then I'm going to make this a little bit darker. So that's like almost like the inside of the biscuit. I need to stop saying that word because my dogs know that word. This could end badly for me today. Okay, it's not entirely dry yet, and I could feel that when I was putting the pencil down. And that's something else you can do as well. When it's still damp, you can go in with your pencil and add in some detail and some lines. And what it does is it kind of half dilutes out. So it's a really nice kind of middle road from something being blended out and having like really sharp pencil lines. So that's something else we can use to our advantage. Just want to bring this in a little bit and just start working this in. So working a little bit faster here because I want this to be quite smooth. There you are, you can see what I'm going for. It does look quite vibrant on the camera, it looks quite yellow. To the naked eye, this isn't quite as yellow. So I'm trying to work with light strokes here, and if there's an area where I've put the pencil down a little bit heavier, I'm kind of scrubbing. I'm not pressing though, but I'm going back and forth a bit more quickly, and that's to help dissolve out those pencil strokes. So this is nothing to do with pressure, this is just the speed of my hand. And I've got these little darker bits here. Okay, so I'm quite enjoying how that's coming out. So what I want to do is this part where the writing is, it's sort of imprinted into the biscuit. That's really difficult to explain if you've never seen a rich tea. But the way they do it with most biscuits, it's like poked in before they're baked. So I want to sharpen up a wee bit here because these lines are quite thin. And I just want to pop in. And I'm basically just following the outline of the letters. Do love a rich tea biscuit. They're what we would call a plain biscuit. You know, you get like a chocolate biscuit would be a fancy biscuit. A plain biscuit's one that is just, you know, it's literally just biscuit. Oh wow, I really can't explain myself today. What was wrong with me? So this doesn't have to be exact, you know, it doesn't need to be precise because we are going to be blending it out a little bit. But if we just follow the lines of the letters, we're just tracing it. Again, don't need to press hard. And these little puncture holes, these little dots, obviously sink into the biscuit as well. So I'm just going to put a tiny little dot beside each of these holes to give that impression that there is an indent there. And all I want to do is soften this, so I'm just going to trace the outline as well. You do have to have quite a steady hand for this, and for me, some days are better than others. It is very damp and windy here today, and my hand is quite tight. It's not painful, but I can feel it's not like completely stretched out, so I'll just take my time. The joys of Scottish weather. We are firmly heading towards autumn. Some of our leaves are coming off the trees, although it's still quite mild. I mean, it's not cold, but it's very windy, and see the damp days are coming, so we're trying drastically to get harvest finished before we're in the permanently wet season. I'm going to let that dry off for a little while, and we're going to come back to our little pal Herman here, who's looking rather fetching already. And there's some really fun red colours in this set. One of the ones I really like is the hot red. So if I just show you this here, it's a really intense colour, so it's super cool, and I think that's going to jive really nicely with our oranges here, because we do want them to be quite bright and friendly, especially since he's got a really washed out looking tea biscuit. So again, just sharpen this up because we're into these sort of more intricate areas. Okay, so when we think about this then, again we have lots of detail and lots of hatching. By sort of intuition, we want to be putting our darker colour, which is our hot red, in on these hatched areas, and I think that's going to look pretty good. So I'm going to start with this claw here. Again, don't need to press hard, no need to do that because this pencil is like supercharged. And just in these little hatched areas, you can see there I'm just putting a little tickle down. And again, if we want to build it up and make it more intense, we can do that, is not a problem. We can do that on a subsequent layer. Now, in order to be able to layer this up as much as possible, we do also want to keep water to a minimum, which is why I would suggest using like a brush pen, like a water brush pen, rather than just a paintbrush. Obviously, if you have very good control of a brush, you know, if you're more of a painter, then by all means feel free. Personally, I don't trust myself, and I like these water brushes. They're convenient. I don't have to mess about with pots of water and one thing and another. So you can see how bright that is. So I'm just working my way around the areas where I've put that pencil down, and then I'm working in towards the orange. There we go, yeah. It's looking pretty good. So let's try with this one here. This is his big claw. This must be his dominant claw. So I'll draw the conclusion that Herman is right-handed. I was out with some friends a couple of weeks ago. It was Mr. Jem's birthday, so we decided to go to our local pub, which is something we have not been doing. Our local pub is very small, and there's usually only 2 or 3 parties of drinkers in, so we feel quite safe there. And collectively, us and our staff, we're in contact every day, so, you know, we're not like a risk to each other. Anyway, I digress. So we decided we would go to our local pub, and we had a little darts tournament. We decided to have a little darts tournament. Now, Mr. Jem and I have a dartboard in the house, and we also have our own darts. We don't play as much as we'd like to, and we're both very, very rusty because we haven't played much in a long time. But we thought it would be fun for everyone. So we got all set up and all the rest of it, and as per usual, I was left to keep score because out of a bunch of farmers, not very many of them can count. So I was left to do all the scoreboard, which is fine. I don't mind doing it, but obviously the more pints you have or the more drinks you have, the harder it gets to subtract. So I started to struggle with it. But when we were getting set up, eventually it was my turn to play, and someone else was taking score. And one of the guys turned round and went, "Jem, are you left-handed?" And I was like, no, I just thought I'd throw a dart with my left hand for fun. Of course I'm left-handed. And he's like, "Oh, that's so cool." And I was like, really? I was like, I've never thought being left-handed as being cool. It's usually an inconvenience, if anything. But it was just his reaction. I thought, what a strange reaction to have to someone. Like, as if I would, like, grown an extra, like, head or something. It's like, yeah, I'm left-handed, what of it? And then he was like, "Oh, that makes sense because you're really arty-farty." I was like, okay, right, nice. So I'm also very scientific, and that's got nothing to do with being left-handed. It's just, I don't know, it was just a reaction that really surprised me for some reason. I wasn't expecting someone to be so enthusiastic about me being left-handed. So needless to say, I was the only left-handed darts player that evening. Not that it did me any good, right enough. I didn't win the tournament. Okay, I'm really pleased with how this is going. This is looking real nice. And it's nice to be able just to go like a wee section at a time like this, because you can really take your time. I don't know if you guys can hear the wind outside. I don't know if the microphone will pick that up. It's really windy. It's just a horrible day today. Okay, I'm thinking in at the body, in the shadow, I think he's probably going to be redder. So in this really tightly hatched area in the back here, I'm just going to put this in pencil. I'm not going to take my water brush to it. And I'm just trying to differentiate here between the different sections of his body. So I think we'll put that in there like that. Yeah, okay. I'm a bit... Oh, I don't know actually. There's so many little sections here. Maybe this one in here too. Okay, we're looking quite good so far. Let's go for this little leg here. I don't know if anybody has ever been nipped by a crab, but it's blinking sore. The town that I grew up in was right on the coast, and going to the beach was a regular occurrence, both with friends, but also at my grandparents' as well. My grandparents' house, my gran's still in that house. You literally come out the door of the building, and the road isn't wide enough for 2 cars because there's always cars parked, and you walk across that road. And there's no pavement, it's just a set of steps, and that takes you straight down onto the beach. So yeah, we lots and lots of time spent on the beach as a youngster, and there was crab nippings more than once. It's usually just little diddly crabs like this size, but man it hurts. Thankfully, never been stung by a jellyfish. Very lucky that way. Apparently, it is very, very painful. I would love to hear from anyone that has been stung by a jellyfish, and I've heard that it stings for sometimes days, and it's very, very uncomfortable. My uncle, my mum's oldest brother, when he was a child, he sat on a jellyfish, so he got stung on his backside, and apparently that was quite traumatic, which I imagine it would be. He's got these little front legs. Again, these anatomical parts will all have names. I do not know anatomical names for bits of crustaceans, unfortunately. And again, just because that's a really small area, I'm not going to put my water brush in there. It looks okay as it is, so I've got this dark bit in here. I'm going to fill this in as well. I'm just working my way down. Not doing anything different here. I think I'll take my water brush to this larger leg here that I'm working on just now. Look at his little eyes as well. He's got little googly eyes. Speaking of googly eyes, you're going to love this one, guys. Obviously, it's coming into the autumn now. The leaves are starting to come off the trees. We have a lot of trees in our garden, and these trees are massive. Like, they're absolutely huge. I think some of you have seen Olga, the beech tree. If I can find a picture of it, I'll stick it in somewhere here for you. And when it comes to the autumn, we have realised very quickly that there's going to be a lot of leaves everywhere. So we've invested in, I call it a leaf cruncher. You get a leaf blower. This is the opposite. It's like a vacuum with the only way I can describe it is it's got like a paper shredder in it. So you suck the leaves up and it like shreds them, and then you can put them into a composter or whatever. We've found one that we want, so we're going to go and pick that up next week, and we've decided we're going to put a massive pair of googly eyes on it, and that was Mr. Jem's idea, not mine. I think that'll be absolutely hilarious. I didn't realise you could buy giant googly eyes, and when I mean giant ones, I mean like the size of dinner plates. So we're going to give the leaf cruncher a name, and it's going to have massive googly eyes, which I personally am really excited about because googly eyes fix everything. So when that happens, I will absolutely 100% share that with you, because that's got to be funny, surely. I don't think Pip's going to enjoy it very much, but I don't think the googly eyes are going to make a difference. I think she'll just not like it anyway. Okay, enough talk about googly eyes. Oh, God. All right. Now look at Herman. Doesn't he look so freaking cute? All right, I'm really happy with that. That's looking good. I want to come back to this rich tea biscuit because it's just not quite right. It's still a little bit pale, and I am quite, not nervous, but I'm apprehensive about adding any more colour to this because I think it might just take it a step too far. There is a pencil called Saddle Brown. It may or may not help us here. So I'm going back to this little swatch I had before, and I'm going to go over. I think this is going to be too much brown, but it's worth trying out. If nothing else, we'll know for next time sort of idea, if that makes sense. See what that, it might be all right. Okay, we're going to have to go really gently with this though, really gently. So I'm going to go back to the side of my pencil, and I know this has got a pointy point on it, but I just want to, ever so gently, ever so gently. Now the good thing about this is I know that I'm safe in the knowledge that the pencil I've got down already isn't going to go anywhere unless I start like really scrubbing at the paper, which obviously I'm not going to do. I just want to test this area up out here though, to see if that's going to give us a bit more of what we want. Oh, and the answer to this might be yes. I'm going to let that dry out for a little bit and I'll have a look at it. Now we've got this rope here, which we could really make it any colour. I think I'm going to go with oak. We're going to make this a kind of darker brown. Now this is one of the pencils that I found in this set where the dipped tip doesn't really match the colour of the pencil, and it's one of the very few in the Inktense set. So again, just put a little tickle down. This part in the back is going to be a bit darker, so press a wee bit harder there. Again, maybe under here is going to be a little bit darker as well. So I'm not bringing the pencil all the way across these areas because I'm just going to pull it out with my water brush. When I'm doing that, I will zoom in a wee bit for you so that you can see what's going on. We've got these little frayed ends as well. And it's things like that, that's such a nice little touch. You know, it's not just a knot in a rope, he's left these little ends. So again, we're going with the little water brush here. And I just want to, as carefully as possible, that's not always the easiest thing to do, just activate this. I'm just using a gentle stroke here, but again, not working fairly quickly, not frantic, but oh, this is tight. It can be difficult to work quickly and accurately. Sometimes you have to sacrifice one for the other. But there we go. I hope you can see now, in at the back here where I've pressed a lot harder with this oak pencil, it does look darker. Now that's obviously helped along by the fact that there's hatching there, but that's one of the ways that you can utilise the pencils to your advantage when you're working with things like this. So I'm going back to my rich tea biscuit now, and you can see that this area is dried and it has just given me a bit more warmth, as if the biscuit has been baked for a bit longer, and that's exactly what I was trying to go for. So I'm not going to do it everywhere, but I am just going to add in a little bit of this in various places just to make it look more biscuity. Obviously that is a technical description, and you guys know I'm all about the technical descriptions. If you're going to draw and colour a biscuit, it needs to look biscuity, otherwise it's not a biscuit, is it? Maybe press a wee bit harder down here. And then I can just grab, and I'm going to grab my big brush here because I really want to try and smooth this out and kind of like blend it in with what's going on in the layer behind it, or the layer underneath it. Okay, that's much better. Much, much better. Happier with that. I think that's the closest I'm going to get to the colour of a rich tea biscuit, to be perfectly honest. So for his little stripy shell that he's carrying, I feel as if I can take a bit of artistic liberty here, and I'd really like to use a nice blue colour. And there's a really nice colour called Dark Aquamarine, and I've been dying to use it for something, so this is where it's getting used. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to be putting a background in here of some description, I want to be able to have a little bit of contrast. So the paler sections of this shell I'm going to leave, and I'm going to put the colour in where the dark areas is. Now that might sound a bit strange, but we have enough room, if I just zoom in again, we have enough room in the hatched areas that there's still white of the paper showing through. So if we put colour down, it is going to show up, although it's going to be a bit more subtle than if we did it on the white areas. I really hope that makes sense. So we'll start with this part behind his eyeballs, and I want to have the most colour in these corners because that's where the heaviest hatching is. And then we'll pull it out. We won't bring it all the way out though, because again, when we activate it with water, we can pull it out a little bit. But if I just add some of that in there and do the same for these sections. I like to think that Herman's got good taste, so he would pick quite a funky shell to live in. So we can test this out now. Try and do this so that I'm not covering it up. I'm just starting in that dark section. And you can see how far there I've actually been able to pull that out just with the water. Try and avoid his eye here. Wow. I wasn't really expecting to be working in such teeny tiny areas with these. There we go, but it's got like quite a nice pop of colour about it without being overpowering or overbearing. That's probably a better word. I've gone outside the lines there, guys. Won't lose any sleep over it. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that, so I can continue on as I was, and we'll do these sections here. So these underneath parts, because this is curving round and away from where our eye is, these have been marked in much darker hatching. So that's obviously meant to be the curvature and the shadow on the shell. So we'll just pop that in. Again, especially in this bottom part, you maybe get away without actually activating it with water. And it's going to be a bit more obvious in these areas with lighter hatching. So I'm just putting the likes of this part, because it's curving that, I'm trying to do this in focus, because it's curving that way, as well as the shell's curving this way. That's really difficult to do when you're actually drawing in hatching. You've got to think very much in 3D, which some people don't find that all that easy. So I'm just putting up a dot of the colour either side so that we can follow that curvature of each sort of bump in the shell here. Hear my little Jack Russell tapping about. Here she comes. Hi. Just wandering about. Here we go. We can start with a water brush. I went to the bathroom earlier. We have a little downstairs toilet next door to the cave, and obviously during the day when I'm working, that's the one I tend to use. And I'd gone to the bathroom, and when I came back, Woo was sitting in the doorway of the cave, but she had her back to me, so she's obviously looking for me and hadn't figured out where I'd gone. And she was waiting there for me, so I knelt down on the floor and I tapped her on the head, and she turned round, like, she looked really surprised. She's like, "Oh, look, it's you." And she started wagging her tail, and I thought, you had absolutely no idea that I was there. So she didn't hear like the toilet flushing or anything, and she didn't hear me coming up behind her. To be fair, I was barefoot. I didn't have any like shoes or slippers or anything on. And I just think, bless you. That's when you realise that she really is old. I mean, she's great for her age, but absolutely deaf as a post. And you've got to be careful now, because sometimes you actually frighten her if she doesn't know that you're there and you touch her, or, you know, all of a sudden you just appear in front of her. She's like, "Oh, I don't want to give the poor wee dog a heart attack." I've just realised, see, by making this shell blue and stripy, it looks as if Herman's got pyjamas on. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but he's supposed to be at a tea party, so I suppose that's wholly inappropriate. Ah, goodness me. Anyway, right, let's take a wee zoom out now. I think he looks absolutely adorable. I really, really do. I'm really pleased with this, and I'm glad I've decided to go with the Inktense pencils. Down at the bottom here, we have this teacup. Now, I'm kind of swithering with this teacup because in quite a few of the images, Rory Dobner has put in this sort of pale blue-grey ink, and he does it over here in Geraldine's page as well with the plates and the crockery and things. So I'm kind of reluctant to put anything else in, but I do still want to make it look as if we've done something. So this is one of these occasions where I'm going to grab another pencil. Now in the Derwent Lightfast range, they've got some really nice pale sort of creamy yellow colours, and there's two, there's champagne and wheat, and they both look quite similar, but one's slightly more yellow than the other. So I just want to have a quick scrub out of those and decide which one would be better for the teacup. And I think it's going to be the wheat, because it's got slightly less yellow in it, because we're thinking about this as porcelain or fine china. So again, this is just really an accent, and what's going to happen is whatever we decide to put in for the background, it's going to make this pop out, so it doesn't need to be a lot of pencil. So again, just starting in these hatched areas, I'm just going to put in some like swishy lines going this way, not pressing hard as always, but we're just going to build them up a little bit so that there's just a hint of colour to take away from that, you know, sort of starkness of the paper. So we do that there. Maybe bring this along down the bottom a little bit, and then add in just a couple on this side as well. So it's very, very subtle, but it just makes it look a little bit more finished without taking away from the fact that this is maybe a white porcelain or ceramic cup. I would imagine this would be fine china, really. We're talking about quite a grand tea party here, so I would say use it sparingly, and if you think it's not enough, you can always go back in. You know, you can step away and have a wee look at it and see what you think. And there's some hatching here as well, so I'm going to pop that in there. This is obviously part of the scenery, but we'll just use that to our advantage to pop in a little bit of this pencil. Just sort of add a hint of it here and there, maybe a bit down there. Okay, right, I'm happy with that. Okay guys, I'm going to stop there for today. I'm going to call it quits. I think this page has been reasonably successful so far. I'm quite happy with it. So my plan is that next time we'll make a start on Geraldine. We'll do some work on her. We're not going to be able to get this side done in one sitting. This will probably be in 2 parts. And once we've got all this coloured in, then the subsequent video I will start on the background. I should be able to do the background in one video, but we can play that one by ear and see how we go. So I hope that you've enjoyed this today. I have had great fun, and this is a really nice change from Drommenvanger. I really enjoyed Drommenvanger, but it's nice to come to a simpler book after working in such intense detail for such a long period of time. So I think this is just a nice change for us. I'd just like to remind you as well that the giveaway is still open for the 5,000 subscribers. So if you haven't entered and you'd still like to have a chance to win one of our really, really nice prizes, then please feel free to go and check that video out. It will be in the end card, and it's also down in the description as well if you just want to click on the link down there. I want to thank you very much for watching, guys. If you've made it this far, you know the drill. You've obviously enjoyed yourselves, and don't pretend that you haven't. So take a moment for me, please, if you don't mind, to hit that like button. It is the equivalent of an internet cuddle, and I love cuddles. So that is all for today, and we shall see you back in the cave on Sunday for another video. Have a great day everyone, and bye for now.